Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. We lost one of the great black statesmen of film and television this week. Louis Gossett Jr. sadly passed away at 87 years old from an undisclosed illness. Now, Louis Gossett Jr. will always be remembered for his signature role as the drill sergeant of the 1982 film, An Officer and a Gentleman. However, Louis Gossett Jr.'s career had many signature roles that he will be remembered for, such as his performance in A Raisin in the Sun, and his signature role as Fiddler in the miniseries Roots, and many comic fans will remember him for his portrayal of the cop in the 1989 version of The Punisher and the 1984 film Enemy Mine. Now, Louis Gossett Jr.'s career went on for over 60 years, and over the course of that 60 years, he wasn't just playing the sergeant in An Officer and a Gentleman. No, he was a true statesman and a diplomat for black cinema and television, always presenting the black image with his positive portrayals in his balanced, humanized performances over the course of his legendary 60-year career. Now, Louis Gossett Jr. got his start with a father and a mother when he was born in Coney Island, Brooklyn, here in New York, and in that two-parent household where his father worked as a porter and his mother worked as a nurse, they provided him with a family foundation that led to him being able to have the success later on in his life. And that two-parent household was one, like many of those during that dark time of Jim Crow that was going on in the South and discrimination in the North, where we had working class black people working together to give their children a better life. And Louis Gossett Jr. made every effort to present a positive image as related to them, and went on to go out here and have the success that they worked to build him up for. Now, Louis Gossett Jr., as he was growing up, wasn't originally planning to go into acting because at 6 feet 1 inches tall, he was working towards an athletic career in sports. However, after he had a sports injury, he decided to take an acting class. And as he took this acting class, he starred in a school production at 17 years old of You Can't Take It With You. And after giving a great performance in that production, Louis Gossett Jr.'s high school teacher encouraged him to take not only the acting class, but encouraged him to audition for a Broadway part. And 17-year-old Louis Gossett Jr. got a role in this Broadway production of Take a Giant Step in 1953, and that basically started his acting career, because when it comes to most actors who are teenagers, getting a break in a Broadway production when you just start out, I mean, that's a major accomplishment, and it showed how talented Louis Gossett Jr. was. And after graduating Abraham Lincoln High School in 1954, he attended New York University, declining an athletic scholarship and even declining an opportunity to play for the New York Knicks because he wanted to continue on with his acting. And as he continued on with his acting, he accepted a role in what would be considered one of the most iconic plays of the 1960s, Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun. And as he worked on the play A Raisin in the Sun at about 18 or 18 years old, and started this role in A Raisin in the Sun, he basically wound up getting one of the first of his signature roles, playing George Murchison. Now, he had did other roles in other plays before A Raisin in the Sun, like I believe it was Desk Set and other performances. But the whole thing was once he got a Raisin in the Sun and played George, this basically started him with his first signature role. And as he got his first signature role, this basically started him off with his Broadway career. And that Broadway career was one where Louis Gossett Jr. went on to great success because A Raisin in the Sun, which starred the late statesman Sidney Poitier and the late Diana Sands, one of the great ladies of black acting, and Ruby Dee. This play basically was one of the iconic plays of the 1960s and is considered to be one of the great plays of black canon, of black literary canon. Now, in 1961, Louis Gossett Jr. got to reprise his role in the cinematic version of A Raisin in the Sun, and as he got to reprise this role, it basically started him on a road to starting his legendary film career. Now, Louis Gossett Jr., as he continued to go on to success as an actor, had to encounter a lot of racism, and he continued to persevere in the face of that racism, continuing to go on as an actor and a singer and performer overall. And he did many different Broadway plays, like he did in 1961 when he was a part of a off-Broadway play called The Blacks, and which featured James Earl Jones, Roscoe Lee Brown, the late Cicely Tyson, Maya Angelou in charge, Gordon, and he also was in a Broadway play called The Tambourines to Glory, and also was in a play called The Golden Boy. Now, as his Broadway career went on, he was in a musical play called The Zulu and The Zendaya, and continued to go on. And as he continued to go on with his Broadway career, he also made lots of records. And as he made lots of these records, he also starred in different films and continued on with this until he and making TV appearances. And he was in an episode of Bonanza. He was also in other films like Travels with My Aunt and in a film called A Laughing Policeman. And he made some performances that I remember as a kid growing up. His legendary appearance on Good Times and on The Jeffersons, I remember those. And I also remember Louis Gossett Jr. Before an Officer and a Gentleman playing his other signature role where he played the fiddler on Roots. So Louis Gossett Jr. had a storied career before he ever even came to play the role of the sergeant in An Officer and a Gentleman, because before that he was again on Good Times and he was on The Jeffersons and he was also on the fiddler on Roots, and he was also making an appearance on The $6 Million Man. I mean, this is just shows the range of Louis Gossett Jr. and showed how great a performer he truly was. I mean, he was a gifted and talented performer, and he always went out and presented black people in a dignified way, showing us as respectable, showing us as having dignity and character, and showing us as truly being great no matter what role he played. And he always presented black people in a respectable way all throughout his performances. And as he continued to have this career before he got his Oscar, he got a lot of Emmy nominations. I mean, he got Emmy nominations for being a guest appearances on several occasions, like he did with a miniseries called Backstairs at the White House. And he also got one for a television series, Palmerstown, USA, for outstanding lead actor. So people were noticing Louis Gossett Jr.'s performances. And then in 1982, he played the drill instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Emile Foley, in An Officer and a Gentleman. And that was one of my favorite movies as a man, as a boy growing up, because it was one of the legendary black performances, because it was one of the few roles where you saw a black man playing a respectable, dignified black man, and a black man with great character. I mean, when I think of Oscar winners, sadly, these days, like Halle Berry and Denzel Washington playing roles like the Brute and the Jezebel, I mean, it just saddens me because Louis Gossett Jr. never had to sacrifice his dignity or his self respect to get that Oscar. He was one of the great performers because he won that Oscar on the merits of his acting, of his showcasing his skills. Because if you watch An Officer and a Gentleman, you will see as he plays this sergeant, he plays this man with great dignity and character. And I always remember him for the iconic line when he cooks and roasts Richard Gere's Mayo character by calling him mayonnaise, because that line, it just really makes you think about how, again, great Louis Gossett Jr.'s character is. I mean, how he maintains his face in the face of dealing with everything with the Mayo character and trying to shape him into a man. I mean, that's one of the great things about that role in An Officer and a Gentleman. It showed you a black man in a leadership role, showed you a black man as an authority figure, showed you a black man with grace, dignity, and class. That was one of the reasons why it's considered to be Louis Gossett Jr.'s signature role out of all the iconic roles he portrayed, from A Raisin in the Sun to his appearances on $6 Million Man, Good Times, Jeffersons, and being the fiddler on Roots. And that career just continued to go on to greatness because as Louis Gossett Jr.'s career went on, he went on to star in a TV show called Powers of Matthew Starr, which has a cult following, and he even played the president of Egypt, Anwar Sadat. I mean, that just showed his range because Anwar Sadat was an Egyptian man, but you had Louis Gossett Jr. basically portraying Anwar Sadat and showing his humanity in that miniseries. I remember that miniseries playing on Channel 11 as a boy, and it just ran on, and I never thought about how great it was back then, but after seeing it later on, it just showed how fantastic a range he had. And again, Louis Gossett Jr. was so great that he was nominated at the Emmy Awards for this syndicated miniseries and nominated for a Golden Globe. And he also starred in Jaws 3D at the time, showing that he also was considered a bankable actor as related to franchises. And he continued to go on and starred in another signature role for many sci-fi fans in Enemy Mine, and then continued to go on starring in other productions that were great for black people, like A Gathering of Old Men, and also starred in another 80s film that many Gen Xers remember, The Principal, at the side of Jim Belushi, who was an up-and-coming star. And I remember The Principal as a kid, and that was a fun film, but it just showed his range. And Louis Gossett Jr. was never one to turn away from a good, fun script. And even though he had an Oscar, he would star in franchises like the Iron Eagle franchise, and he did a fun movie with Chuck Norris, which was an Indiana Jones type film, which showed his comedy range in Firewalker. I mean, he always picked really fun projects that were just entertaining. And I remember in '89, a lot of people cooking I considered to be one of his great iconic roles as related to superhero movies, in starring in The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. But that movie was just a boatload of fun. Yeah, it was kind of cheesy and no budget, but Louis Gossett Jr. and Dolph Lundgren's performances really made that film stand out. So that was another signature role for many of us comic and sci-fi fans, along with Enemy Mine, which was a great commentary on race. I mean, The Punisher was just a really good movie. And as we went from the 80s to the 90s, Louis Gossett Jr. continued to take on great roles, like in Zora Is My Name that he did on American Playhouse. And he also starred in one of the great 90s films, which starred Lynn Whitfield, The Josephine Baker Story. Now, for that role, Louis Gossett Jr. was awarded once more with a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor, and the Josephine Baker story is considered to be one of the great 90s biopics. It was an absolutely fantastic film, and as his career continued, he continued to do movies in the Iron Eagle franchise, and as he did films in the Iron Eagle franchise, he also acted in the Broadway version of Chicago, and as related to that. And he also did a film called Inside, which he got a Cable Ace Award nomination. And again, having a storied career, he continued to do film and television. I remember him doing the film Diggstown, which is considered, I believe, to be his last real big box office hit. But as his career went on, he just had a, again, great storied career. I mean, he was in films like Legend of the Mummy. He was in the Left Behind series as the president, and he did Stargate SG-1, and even did a Tyler Perry movie. And as his career went on, Louis Gossett Jr. just was always great in whatever performance he did, and he was always an actor who had, again, showing a great range of skill, continuing to go on to do cable shows like The Boardwalk Empire, Extant, Madam Secretary, and The Book of Negroes, then returned to TVs for The Good Fight, and then did the Watchmen TV series, which he got another Emmy Award nomination. I mean, he is a very legendary and storied career. And when I think of, again, great black actors and great statesmen, I think of Louis Gossett Jr. And when I think of Louis Gossett Jr., I always see him as the bridge to the golden age of black television and cinema that Bill Cosby ushered in. I always saw Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier as the first part of that whole bridge of positive images of black people, and I always saw Louis Gossett Jr. with his performances as the middle part, him and the late Robert Guillaume, because if it wasn't for Louis Gossett Jr. being the statesman who ushered in a bridge with Robert Guillaume, with Benson, we wouldn't have gotten a positive and balanced and humanized portrayal of black people that Bill Cosby created when he created The Cosby Show, because it was Louis Gossett Jr.'s performances that showed us a positive image of black people that allowed the door to be opened that Bill Cosby was trying to kick in with The Cosby Show, because it was Robert Guillaume's performance on Benson that was a major part of that bridge, along with Louis Gossett Jr.'s dignified performances in all of those performances he made from the 50s all the way through the 70s. And then Robert Guillaume was the near end of that bridge. And again, with Robert Guillaume and Louis Gossett Jr. together, we got some of the great positive images of black people. And then Bill Cosby comes along, and then we get the door open to great filmmakers like Spike Lee and the Hudlin brothers and many more, who opened that door to that great golden age. So Louis Gossett Jr., as I see it, is an icon of black entertainment, and a lot of people really don't appreciate all the work that Louis Gossett Jr. did over the course of his, I believe to be, almost 60-year career. I mean, this man's legacy is, as I see it, one of the great legacies, and just like Bill Cosby, his legacy basically was the one that allowed us to see a positive image of black manhood and black masculinity, allowed us to see a great range of black people as related to the characters he portrayed, and allowed us to see balanced, humanized portrayals of black people. And his performances, again, allowed us to see nuance as related to black people. That's one of the things I always liked about his performances, is that you always got some nuance to his characters. You always saw a little the motivation of his characters. That's one of the things I really loved about a Louis Gossett Jr. performance. I mean, he always put depth and layers on his characters, and that's what made him one of the great performers. And when you watch a Louis Gossett Jr. performance, I mean, it's just on another level, and that's why I just have great respect for his acting. I mean, he was truly a gifted performer, and I'm really sad to hear about his passing. I'm really sad to hear about him leaving, but I knew that he was going through a lot of illnesses and dealing with a lot of health issues, and he was dealing with them because at one point they were saying he only had 6 months to live, and again, I'm really sad to hear that, but he went on to live even longer, and he was struggling with his health for an extended period of time, and sadly he wound up passing away on Friday. This is what his nephew was saying. Now, Louis Gossett Jr., after passing away at 87 years old, he is survived by 2 sons, and those 2 sons look like they've gone on to continue having a family, and they are filmmakers in their own rights. I mean, I've read about both of Louis Gossett Jr.'s sons. I mean, and it looks like he was a pretty good father because he prepared his sons for manhood, and they followed in his footsteps, understanding the power of black image is behind the camera. And that's something I put in much of my literature, like in the Brody character in Spellbound. And it's something that just, again, when I look at Louis Gossett Jr.'s career, he shows me how a man is supposed to operate behind the scenes. I mean, he prepared his sons for manhood. He had great discipline and character, and again, was a great statesman fighting against the anti-black racism in Hollywood by showing his character as a man, continuing to persevere in the face of all the racism he encountered from the dark days of Jim Crow in the South and the discrimination that he suffered in the North, because in places like California, they were not really open to black people when he first started out. I mean, he dealt with a lot of hostility there, and he continued to persevere in the face of it, being a great statesman and being a man of great class. And he showed us that you could go on to have success in the racist entertainment industry and continue to persevere, presenting a positive image of black manhood and black masculinity over the course of his legendary 60-year career. I mean, I will greatly miss Louis Gossett Jr. He was another role model for me growing up. I mean, just like Bill Cosby. And when I think of Louis Gossett Jr., again, this man exemplified class. This man exemplified dignity. This man exemplified character. He was, again, I will keep repeating it, a great statesman of black film and black television, and he will definitely be missed by many. I mean, I'm really sorry to hear about his passing, but I know that if he served God, he would definitely be going on to the kingdom for his great work. And I thank God I got a chance to see Louis Gossett Jr.'s performances when he was alive and appreciate all of the great things about them. I'm sorry to hear about the passing of Louis Gossett Jr. again. I mean, if there's ever anybody I could just say rest in power, it's Louis Gossett Jr., because Louis Gossett Jr. is a man who should rest in power because he made every effort to empower brothers and sisters while he was on this earth. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, Isis, Imitation of Life. The Goddess Next Door helps a young black girl overcome racism during the era of Jim Crow in this Golden Age Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Imitation of Life in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.